Okay, well, good evening, everyone, and
Hello.
apologies right off the bat for having to postpone and reschedule our live discussion to this evening, but I truly appreciate all of your understanding. Yeah, I just came down with not a fun something or other Sunday, kind of Saturday evening into Sunday. Not COVID. I've tested and it was negative. Um, but yeah, just not fun. But I'm feeling much better today. I still have a little bit of a cough. So you might see I might pop in a cough drop just because my throat's really raw from coughing. But um, yeah, other than that, feeling better, like I said. So excited to talk about our last book of the year
Mm-hmm.
for us here on DoubleBookedCo. And have to say, what a book to end the year with,
I know.
especially after the last couple books that we've read.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of I feel like a lot of the books we read this year like really took a deep dive into
Yeah, a
like,
lot of them were bummers.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like really sad and
Yeah,
dark.
like Snow Falling on Cedars. I was just watching April at Getting Hugga with It. She's doing another Unhaul series, which I love watching Unhauls. But in the first one she did, she held up Snow Falling on Cedars. She's like, it's supposed to be really good, and I think it's going to be just really interesting. And I was like, oh girl, it's going to be so
Don't read it.
depressing.
Yeah,
It was a good book, but oh man,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. Lots of tough stuff.
yeah. I will say, if anything, throughout this whole process, I've been so happy to have access to audiobooks
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of these books,
Yeah.
especially this last one, because I like flew through it because I read it via audio, but like followed along in the book. So I was able to set it at like 2.75 speed and like,
Mm-hmm.
cause that's probably how fast I read.
Yeah.
And I just flew through it because I was like, I can't, I was not, this book was not fun for me to read. I did not enjoy this book. So it was nice to be able to fly through it. Because if I had just read it on my own, I would have been so distracted and like wanting to put it down that my mind would like not have let me like read it well. So by doing it with the
Mm-hmm.
audio, it kept me reading it so I could absorb everything. But yeah, I mean, just in general, the book club this year has been pretty fun. I mean, I think the lightest read we read would have been the Jenny Colgan book, and then the
Yeah.
the what's that one? Green light,
Um, Green
green
Glass House.
green glass house,
Green Glass House.
not the
Yeah.
glass house, the green glass house.
No. Yeah.
Ah. So it looks like Cool Gamers here. Hello, and Andy's here.
Hello, cool gamer.
Hello.
Hello.
Um, So before we get into our discussion of our book club book tonight, let's kind of talk a little bit about the future, what next year looks like. Because yeah, we're coming up on the year end here. Do you
Yeah.
want to kind of talk to us a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think first of all, before I get into like what's going to be happening for the book club, we're going to be changing our days for new releases. For all of our videos that we're doing, we're going to move from Sundays to Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock our time this time. Um, Weekends are going to be busy coming up for both of us, and just to make a little change, and baby G should be in bed for you, hopefully these things will work. So we'll be
Mhm.
switching to Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time in the US for everything starting in January. And our first will be on the 3rd of January. So switched from Sundays to Tuesdays. And for book club next year, we are including your choices. So similar to last year, we're going to have 3 picks for every month, maybe 4 sometimes. That last half of the year, I'm not too sure what's going to fit where yet, but we're going to have at least 1 pick every month be a suggestion from some from one of you guys. Maybe we'll fill in one or two. It might be all picks that you guys have submitted to us. So I have put stuff together in groups that make sense with the same kind of theme, or mostly I try to get things that will go together with overarching themes, like middle grade March, an Irish readathon in March, that kind of thing. And then nonfiction for Nonfiction November, that kind of thing. So it'll be the similar thing to this past year, where we try and group it with bigger read-alongs. But we really wanted to include you guys as a thank you, because we love you guys and we're so happy that you're here with us. So we're going to have your options come up every month too. And of course we will say like who submitted it and everything else when we go through everything. So that will be for most of the year next year. So we have also decided for January that the pick will be something that Dani and I will pick. Rather than voting in November and waiting, since we don't really have any new releases, we don't do videos in December, we just give everybody a break. That we'll just announce at the end of November what the January book will be, and then you guys know you have a whole month to get it, and it is what it is. So February, March, April will be your voting. Everyone will be voting. May will be my pick for my birthday. June, you all will be voting again. July's pick will be Dani's for her birthday, and then August, September, October, November will be everybody else's vote too, just not December. So we just wanted to include you more, and I hope that you guys like the groupings that we've made, and you could all vote on fun stuff. And a lot of good stuff was suggested, and a lot of stuff I had wanted to read and forgotten about. So thank you everyone for submitting everything. If you want to sneak something in under the wire and like comment something now, you can totally do that. But that will be it for next year. So everything moving to Tuesdays at 8 p.m. So that means on a day when we have a new release video, and then we'll have reading sprints afterwards. It'll be at 8:30. And the book for January, we have decided, is going to be more lighthearted and hopefully less depressing. I think we all need a better start to the year. And not knocking any of the books we've read this year. They've all been wonderful. Love the discussions. So glad to be reading this with all of you guys. Learned so much. It's been such a delight and such a positive to this year. But we picked something, hopefully, that will be not depressing. So it's, I think, historical fiction. It's a timeline split, but it's a standalone. Don't worry about this. And it is by Lauren Willig. It's called That Summer. So here's the cover. I think this is a first edition, so the paperback might be different. I don't know. But I will read the description here. It's a lot, so bear with me. Okay, 2009. When Julia Connolly learns that she has inherited a house outside London from an unknown great-aunt, she assumes it's a joke. Wrapped up in her busy New York life, she hasn't been back to England since the car crash that killed her mother when she was 6, an event she remembers only in her nightmares. When she arrives at Herne Hill, however, to reluctantly sort through the house with the help of her cousin Natasha and an attractive antiques dealer named Nicholas, bits of memory start coming back. Then she discovers a pre-Raphaelite painting hidden behind the false back of an old wardrobe, and a window onto the house's shrouded history begins to open. 1849. Imogen Grantham has spent nearly a decade trapped in a loveless marriage to a much older man, Arthur. The one bright spot in her life is her stepdaughter, Evie, a high-spirited 16-year-old who is the closest thing to a child Imogen hopes to have. But everything changes, when 3 young painters come to see Arthur's collection of medieval artifacts. One of the artists, Gavin Thorne, is a quiet man with the unsettling ability to read Imogen better than anyone ever has. When Arthur hires Gavin to paint her portrait, no one can guess the outcome of events that the hands of fate have set in motion. From modern-day England to the early days of the pre-Raphaelite movement, That Summer takes readers on a riveting journey through a mysterious old house, a hidden love affair, and one woman's search for the truth about her past and herself. So, there we go, That Summer. There we go. If you guys remember, not last year, but the year before, 2021, Dani and I spent the whole year, just the two of us, reading through her whole Pink Carnation series by Lauren Willig. We had such a great time. We were just talking about how much fun we had doing that too. And you have read another one of her standalone books on your own earlier this year, right?
Yes.
What was that? English something?
The English Wife.
Yeah. And you liked it. So we figured this would be a good pick for you guys, not only because we like her writing, it's very readable, but it'd be something kind of fun and interesting, little mystery, little historical fiction, sort of women's literature, whatever you want to call it. But so here's January's pick. I hope you guys can get a copy. It is on Hoopla. Dani, you checked, right? It's on Hoopla.
Yep.
It should be at, I would think, most libraries. Maybe it's on Scribd too. I hadn't thought to check that. But anyways, so here we go. This is January's book. And we look forward to you guys voting and everything starting January 3rd on Tuesdays now, when we're moving all of our stuff too.
Yeah, she does a nice job of like that split, that timeline. I've read some books that have like split timelines, and it's like that never really feels connected. You know, she does a nice job of that, because most of her books have some kind of split timeline.
Yeah, I've read a few of them. I mean, it's been a while ago, but it was spent mostly in the past, you know, but like a little bit in the future. It was almost all in the past, and it was distracting when it would come to the future, because it would only happen like 2 or 3 times in these books. It was sort of like, what's happening? Oh yeah, that's right. It's a split timeline, but really it's all. So yeah, she is really readable. This is about 350 pages, a little less. So hopefully that's doable for everybody. Thank you, Andy. Man, on top of stuff here. So yeah, hope you guys will enjoy it. I hope we like it too. I think we will.
Absolutely. So again, for everyone, and I'm sorry, I've got a cough drop in, and it's one of those cough drops that's like stays sticky. So it's like sticking to my teeth, and I'm trying to like move it to a different spot, but then I feel like I'm going to swallow it and choke. And so I'm really trying hard to like keep it in a spot. And I apologize, because I hate when people like chew gum and talk to you. And I feel like that's what I'm doing to you all right now. So I apologize. But anyways, again, for everyone, January's read, because we're going to skip December, is That Summer by Lauren Willig. And the first sprints will be on Tuesday, January 3rd of 2023. Can you believe it? At 8:30. So we'll have our new releases. Excuse me. And then our reading sprints thereafter. So if you are able to join us, we would be happy to have you. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Laura. See, oh, looks like my mom is here. Hello. Okay, so let's jump into why we are all here, which is this memoir, Jeannette Walls, The Glass Castle. So this is our read for, which was for November. Yeah, nonfiction November. Oh, that's why we read this one. Nonfiction. I get it now. It just feels like this whole month is a blur. So anywho, this was our read for November. And just before we even get into it and everything, very critically acclaimed book. We have heard people talk about it for years. Very popular read, has always been well spoken about, like reviewers rave about it. I've never heard anything bad about this book.
Same.
So kind of getting right into it, how we start all of our discussions, right, is, you know, rating a book. But, and I know that I feel like I'm speaking for both of us when I say this, like, is it even fair to rate nonfiction?
Yeah.
Because it's nonfiction. So what are your thoughts on this? Especially because the way Goodreads is set up, in order to be able to have a book show up on your list, you have to give it a rating. So I guess the one part of the question is, do you rate nonfiction? And if so, how do you rate it? Or what do you do on Goodreads to count it as read?
I count them. I know I always rated nonfiction just like I rated fiction, how much I enjoyed it, if it was well written, plot, whatever. I mean, if the story was together, if it made sense. Until a couple of years ago, I suddenly thought, this is someone's life that I'm rating, and this feels kind of crappy. I don't know. So I tend to do 3 stars as a general rule, because I liked it. It was interesting, but it wasn't, I don't know. It's usually something kind of bad that happens in someone's life. Everyone's got trials and tribulations, of course, but I just sort of feel like, oh, I don't know. So I generally rate things as a 3, but if I really enjoyed it, I will do a 4 or 5, but I won't go below a 3 unless I hated it or something. So that's what I do. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, similar feeling because yes, I mean, especially for memoirs, you're literally like rating someone's
right.
like
Someone's
account
life.
of life. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to read some depressing book. I want to read how fabulous someone's life is, right?
Your life was only okay.
Yeah, like, this was garbage. I want
Mhm.
to see someone who won $1 million, you know, like, but it's hard to like give it a rating. So what I try to do is I try to take my like enjoyment level out of the rating. Like, as you know, I rate books based on like their writing, the creativity, the content, my enjoyment, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But with this, I try to take like the enjoyment factor out of it a little bit and look at like the writing style, how well it was like taken in, like was it easy to read? And like, this is going to sound really silly because it's like it's a little bit judgmental, but almost like the plausibility, like, does this sound like they're embellishing? Because ever since James Fry's Million Little Pieces or whatever, I tend to be a little bit more skeptical of memoirs because I think to myself, like, there's a certain level or amount of creativity they can add to a memoir. They can recall things a little bit more grandiose than they really happened. So for me, I think to myself, like, does this feel like this could happen? So I kind of put that into account too. Like, did this feel real? Because it is supposed to be nonfiction. It is supposed to be a real account. So that sometimes adds a little bit to it. I haven't really read too many that have felt really like not real. But yeah, so I mean, for this book, like I've said to you off camera, I did not like it. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but I wouldn't say that the writing was bad. I think it's very readable. I think that it was well written. There is a few, like, I think the parts are divvied up a little bit weird. Like, the 2 beginning parts are ginormous, and then like you have 3 little parts at the end. And so I didn't really care for that. But in general, I did think it was well. I think it was written well. So I would probably give it a 3, just because I feel good for a nonfiction there, and I tend to put a lot on nonfiction in 3s. So yeah, I never give nonfiction a 5. I may have given one nonfiction a 5.
I think I have quite a few times non-memoirs given them.
Right. Yes. Like
memoirs.
That Jack the Ripper book, the 5 or something. I gave that a 5-star. That was amazing. But yeah, memoirs I very rarely give 5 stars because I don't know, it feels weird to be like, good job. You know, like,
yeah.
But Andy says, I rate nonfiction. It can still be well written or include biased info, so there are things to influence the rating. Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Yep.
Totally get it.
Yeah. So yeah, I would give this one a 3. I didn't think it was terrible. Well written. And I think the like amount that was here was pretty decent. And I feel like the story, the way that she told it, it made sense. And I like that she didn't do like a lot of like jumping back and forth, because sometimes in memoirs that'll happen. But I also kind of had a little bit of an issue with that as well, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So anywho, let's move on to some real hard-hitting questions, because this is a hard-hitting book.
It is.
So our first question just relates to like the opening of the book. So why do you think for this particular memoir, why do you think that she opens with the story about burning herself while she's making hot dogs? And then how that kind of elaborates into her being at the hospital. And then at some point, her father just decides, we're done with this. And he like whisks her away. And he says something like, I'm taking you to safety or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
How does that set the stage for the rest of the memoir? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a great opener because it says everything you need to know about the family dynamic and the adults that are in charge, theoretically, and how she's raised. She's 3. She's cooking hot dogs and boiling water on a stove by herself, which is something that most people, I think, would not allow to happen this day and age, especially. And I know, like, I'm not talking about like how times change and like different trends change when you raise your kids and stuff, not that stuff, but just like from a safety issue, having a toddler standing on a stool in front of a gas stove boiling water for like a dinner, that's not really. So I think all of it just sets it up, like, without saying a lot about it and having to explain every little thing, like, this is the family dynamic, this is how it's going to be, buckle up, you know. So I liked that part because it was such a good opener. It really hooked you, like, oh wow, okay, wow, okay, you know, right from the get-go. How did you feel?
So I would agree with the fact that it's a pretty good like metaphor for the entire book. Like
Mm-hmm.
that these kids were gonna get themselves hurt in some way because they were being neglected.
Mm-hmm.
And the parental unit would step in at the last moment and save them,
Right.
but not in a very like responsible way. It would always be in some kind of other way.
Mm-hmm.
And the children would accept it and be happy for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how the entire book played out, is every time something would happen, they would like react to it in a certain way, and then everything was okay. And I just was so perturbed by that entire thing every time it would happen. And obviously as children, like they're that feeling is constantly reinforced, so they feel like that's the norm, like that's okay. So I'm not like blaming them by any means for
Mm-hmm.
like accepting that like they should have talked back. No, I mean they're children obviously. um
Right.
but I think what I didn't like about that particular scene, and what set me up for starting to not like the book, is that the way that this book is narrated is in like present time. So she's
Mm-hmm.
telling all the stories as they are happening technically. She's in that moment. So in that moment she's narrating as a 3-year-old, and she sounds entirely way too old
Mm-hmm.
in that body. So I feel like she's claiming that she was that mature. And I'm not saying that she wasn't a little more mature for a 3-year-old, because they
Yeah.
definitely were all very mature children
Yeah.
because they had to be. But I feel like it was like a 25-year-old narrating this entire book, but it wasn't supposed to be. It's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be coming out of the eyes and mouth of that age child. And what irritated me about that throughout the whole book is that never one point does she reflect and explain how absurd the situation is. She just like, here's my story, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that pissed me off, because it's like the whole book was just like, yeah, shit happens, but you know what? my parents made me a strong individual and I went to Stanford and now I write books and now I just have a happy life. Like, what? And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I feel like that scene just sets up the rest of the book for me to be really upset with the fact that never once in this entire book does she say that all of it was shit. Like, it would literally, I feel like at the end of the book, it should have just said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Because that's what I feel like her message was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I had a shitty life, but look at me now, you know, like. And the thing is I don't even feel like I don't even feel like she thinks she had a shitty life. I think she thinks that it was just like, yeah, it sucked, but we worked so hard and look, we raised, you know, $75 that my dad stole. And, you know, it made me so mad. It just made me so mad. Because I feel like if you're going to tell a story, like, be honest and say, this was messed up. But instead you're like, you're not even saying that.
Yeah.
You're not even saying that. I don't know. So Cheryl says, I was shocked that they were even allowed to go to school. I was pretty shocked too, considering how, you know, hippie-like they were, like, think that they were so much smarter than the rest of the world. And I did find it interesting that on several occasions in the book, Jeannette talks about how gifted all of the children were. And I said, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, that's interesting that you keep saying that. How are you gifted? Like, did you just were born like that? Because, I mean, at some point you'd have to have gotten some kind of extra attention in that area. I can only assume that the mother having teaching, like, education, that she would, you know, have brought that to them, but it's never said. It's never reflected upon that she even discussed anything with them. So I don't know how they were gifted. I mean, good for them if they were, but I mean, it just, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I was surprised that they didn't, like, go, you don't need school, you know?
Right.
So at least there's that. I mean, yeah. Andy says, I read this before I read it on Goodreads, but remember it as a 4 or 5. Went to read the sequel and liked it too. Also read the Silver Star, and that one I rated a 3. Yeah, I think Cheryl also read a bunch of them as well. I think that life was just normal to her. She is likely to have emotional stuff that maybe she could not see at the time from the upbringing. Sure. I don't believe that she is happy. She is messed up. Hi, Sarah.
Oh, hi, Sarah.
How's Canada? Is it cold up there? It's going to be really cold here tomorrow.
I know.
Oh, she goes into how messed up her parents are in that one. Yeah, I probably will not continue on in anything she has. I know how messed up they are.
I know.
Thank you.
I DNFed this book. Like, I did try again, and I got a few more pages, and I had to stop. Not because of animal abuse this time, which thankfully, but just because it hit way too close to home, like the alcohol abuse and like the behavior, mostly by her father, but also her mother too. Like, it was too much like family story time, you know. And I'm going through enough crap in my life right now. I can't handle that at all. So I DNF'd it, but it's super readable. I was pulled right into it, and I wanted to read this. I really do want to read this, and I want to read the second one, and I want to read her other stuff too, because like you said at the start, like, I have never heard a bad thing about this book in the over a decade it's been out, you know. But I don't know. I don't know if I could do the sequel to this. And then the Silver Spur, what is that, like a third one, or is that a separate nonfiction fiction? What was that one of hers? I know she's written quite a few, but I don't know.
Yeah, The Silver Star. I feel like that's a novel. I
really want to read this.
I feel like it's not nonfiction, but I don't know. I don't
know.
I don't really get into it too much. Apparently Canada is cold.
Yeah.
She thinks they escaped in books because they could get them free at the library. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Speaking about how the kids were gifted.
Yeah.
And Andy likes tragic stuff. Most people do.
Yeah,
mean,
I generally don't mind it, but this one just hit me wrong right now, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think that, like I said, the book is not bad. I think it's because of my expectation with memoirs. When I read a memoir, my expectation is not for you to just tell me what happened in this like fluffy, marshmallowy, oh, it wasn't all that bad and I turned out great kind of way. I want it to be a reflection. I want it to be you telling the story in your own voice right now and saying, like, this is what happened and this is how I feel about it now. Like, and that I did not get that from this book.
Yeah.
I don't want to read about the railroad collision of your life and not hear about how you feel about it. Like, I feel like I'm missing an entire piece of the puzzle. So I think my expectation is a little bit off on this one. And that's okay. It's me, one person out of a million who didn't like this way of writing. But yeah. Yeah, it looks like Cheryl enjoyed all the books. And yeah.
Yeah, I like memoirs too.
Yeah. Yeah, Silver Star is fiction.
Oh, okay. Silver Star, okay.
I have not read Educated, but I was just talking to my sister-in-law about that one, and she said it was very good. So yeah. And we'll kind of talk about that topic in a little bit. Let's switch topics here and change our question. And I think, obviously when we chat about these, all of the questions kind of sometimes end up sounding the same. But so number 2 is reviewers state that The Glass Castle is never sad or depressing. Discuss the tone of the book and how you think that the Walls achieved that effect or not. What are your thoughts, Laura?
I think this is sad and depressing, and maybe that's being judgmental, because when Jeannette is experiencing, and I did read ahead for little chapters, and I flip open to some pages and read a part of a chapter or 3 pages that are go, oh no, something bad. So I read more than the 44 pages where I stopped officially, but it does seem like things are more of an adventure when it's happening, when she is 3 or 10 or whatever it is, and it's not sad or depressing because she doesn't remember it that way. But as an adult reading it currently, how do you not find it sad or depressing or unsettling or something? It doesn't seem happy. I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. What about you? What do you think? It's like Oblivion, like an abuser's, you're Stockholm syndrome almost,
Yeah, exactly. I think sad and depressing are probably not the right words for it, but I would not call this a not sad and a not depressing book. I think like Andy just said, it's very matter of fact how she writes it. It's very this is what happened, blah, 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 blah. So I think that's what makes it not depressing. But it is. And especially, so I'm a new parent, and I just think about when Maureen is born, and I was just waiting for them to say that the baby died.
Yeah.
I was just waiting for it. I was just waiting for when they were in the back of that truck and she stopped crying. I was like, she's dead. She's freaking dead. I just waiting for that baby to die because, how does a baby, an infant, survive that kind of lifestyle?
Yeah.
And 4 of them survived that lifestyle. And that's what they are. They're survivors.
Yeah.
And they never once make it sound like that in this book. And it's truly what they are. They are survivors from a really terrible, I mean, just think about it. They probably don't have any immunizations, and not saying that that's all the saved of the world, but I'm just thinking, like, do you know how many probably, like, they needed tetanus shots from whatever they were in that one house? And I'm just thinking about everything, like, how many times that they had gone hungry when that boy came with the BB gun and then the sister shooting him with a real gun. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, these children could have died like a million times over. When she flew out of the car and they didn't even notice.
Yes, I know.
Like, as a parent, I was literally gagging the entire time I was reading this book. The amount of times that these kids were almost or technically sexually assaulted. I was literally vomiting. It was disgusting. And she never once, like, oh, but it's okay. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, oh, we're going to leave all of the windows and the doors open because it's cooler that way. But we're going to let all these vagrants come in and then sexually assault my kids. And then when she tells you that it happens, you're still going to leave the doors open. I feel like if I was a neighbor in that neighborhood, I would literally kidnap their children. Like, unfreaking real. And then never once does she, like, go, that was really crappy. No, she's just like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Like, it kills me. It kills me. This book made me sick. I had 100 pages left at one point, and I was just like, I don't even know if I can continue. Like, it's just makes me sick. You know, and they are.
That's true.
But they shouldn't have to be. Not in this situation. This was insane.
Right.
And the sad thing is there are kids that have it 10 times worse.
Yeah.
I mean, when you heard about the girl, I can't remember what her name, she had a D name, but it was the black girl that she befriends and then goes to the pool with. She ends up getting pregnant, and you find out through how it's written that it was her mother's boyfriend.
God.
And it's so she's getting raped by her mother's boyfriend. Well, he got his because she ends up killing him. So, and then so she goes to jail, and it's just like these poor kids. And I mean, and it happens, and that's the sick thing is, like, this shit happens, and this is back in the 60s. It's still happening today, and much of it is happening in the same places because some places just they haven't moved forward, they haven't progressed. And you know, with Roe versus Wade, I mean, it's just gonna get worse. Anywho, so that was a little tirade there. I even forgot what the question was. It is. I was very saddened and dismayed and disgruntled, and I don't know that it really depressed me, but I think I was upset that it wasn't more like, I feel like the author should have been more upset. And I mean, you can't tell someone how to feel. And I get that. But I think my expectation was there that it needed to have some kind of reflection. So that put a real damper on my reading and my enjoyment of it. But 'tis what it is. Let's move on to a different question. We have a little bit about her siblings. So how would you describe Jeannette's relationship to her siblings and the role that they play in each other's lives?
I can't really speak to that. I only really read stuff through things that was just like her and her point of view, mostly when she was a kid. So I don't really know about the relationship at all. So this is all you and everyone in the comments. I don't know what to say.
Okay. So Cheryl says, happy that they are old enough to get away. It's very messed up, the fact that they are all survived as a miracle. It is. And I think throughout the book, you really see them constantly taking care of each other, especially the boy. And for some reason, I can't remember anybody's name. It was Maureen and Jeannette, obviously, and then Lori, I don't know, the older sister, and then the brother. I liked how, even though he was younger, he was always like sticking up. What's that?
Brian?
No. Was it Brian? I don't know. He was always there and like protecting her. I loved when when the sexual assault happened with the vagrant, and they were going out on like pervert patrol.
Yeah, I
would,
just read that
leave the
part.
house and like with a bat, and they were gonna like scoop the neighborhood and get all the kids or the vagrants out. Brian. It is Brian. Lori and Brian. Maureen. And as they get older, that never went away. They always had each other's backs. And especially as they were starting to get into teenage years and they were devising a plan to get out, they really had each other's back. The only one they kind of like let kind of fall to the wayside was Maureen. But I feel like because of the way it was described, Maureen was kind of taken care of by neighbors at that point. So she wasn't really around. And I think she was a little bit younger compared to the rest of them. I think they were kind of chunked in a close-knit age group. And then Maureen happened. So I feel like she kind of got a little bit less of that sibling camaraderie. And I think you see a lot of that at the end, where you find out that she kind of like ends up not being as, I guess, like, I don't feel like she was as resilient. I think she really fell backward a little bit. She kind of regresses at the end, and then she moves to California. So they're all in New York, and then she moves to California, which probably was the best for her. We don't really know what happens to her there. But yeah, I don't know. But the three of them for sure are very close, and they do all they can for each other. And I think that they definitely still let their parents get away with murder, especially Jeannette. I mean, when she was like trying to be the head of the household and she was making all that money, and then every time her dad came and asked for money, she freaking give it to him. And I get it. Like, I'm not blaming her for that. She was a child. But like, it just makes me so mad. Like, it just makes me so mad. And, just sucks. Because I know what happens, and it happens still today, and it just, yeah. So, again, I just wanted some damn reflection. But anywho, yep, that's how she did survive. Yep.
Yeah.
It is so crazy. As crazy as it makes you for the way she acted, she survived because the true reality of her situation. To find her, she would be nuts. So you adapt to your surroundings and it becomes your norm. Well, absolutely. I think that's 100% correct. I think when you grow up in a certain situation, you don't know what the other side looks like. You don't know, like, the expectation of the world. You don't understand, like, like, for instance, this is going to be like a really crazy example, but if you were born and you lived in a dog cage for your entire life, you would think that that's how you are supposed to live because that's what you have been trained to believe. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's just what it is. So it's the same thing here. And same thing if you were to grow up in a mansion, you would think that everybody grows up in a mansion. It's just, that's the way it is. Unless you are able to get out into the world and see other things. And that's why when she was at that friend's house and she saw the thermostat for the first time, I about broke out in tears. I was just like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, electricity. I mean, in the 60s, to not even experience an indoor bathroom, to not experience heat, like in your home. Like it just was just appalling. And again, this still happens today. This is still a thing around the world. There are third world countries that live in huts. It's the norm to them. I get that. I absolutely get that. I am not trying to sound like that ignorant white woman. I understand. But it just is so appalling to live in a first world country, and even at that time, and to choose. These people chose to live like that. This was not we fell on rough times.
Right.
They chose to live like that.
Over and over again.
Over and over again. Because here's the thing. It is very clear that both of those parents were very intelligent, extremely intelligent, actually. I wouldn't be surprised if the father was savant, because remember how they kept talking about how he would play cards? Yeah. He was counting cards. He was counting cards, and anything he would read would be some kind of like crazy, like nuclear, whatever, blah, 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 and electrophysicist, and he could work as an electrician. So he was a very intelligent person. And yet, because of clearly some abuse that he occurred when he was a child, and his then alcoholism, it completely shattered his ability to hold anything steady. Then the mother, who also was very intelligent,
came from money
and still has money and the ability to have money. She was like this, like, what would you even call that? Like stargazer. Like she was totally just out of it. I don't believe she was a good mother. I don't think she wanted to be a mother, because at any opportunity, she just flaked it off and was like, you need to do this on your own. Right. And I wanted to stab her in the face when she was eating that Hershey bar. I wanted to kill her. I could not believe your children are freaking starving and you're eating a Hershey bar in front of them like they're not going to notice. And then, I'm a sugar addict. No, you're a terrible person. That's who you are. So it's appalling, because they chose to be like this. They chose to live like that. And you get that right from the get-go. When we read like that small prologue or whatever that is in the very beginning, and the mother says, we choose to be like this when they're homeless. It's true. You chose from the very beginning to be completely irresponsible adults and parents. You really did. And when he goes out and gambles and ends up getting the rest of her tuition money at the end, I'm like, see, and why couldn't you do that for your entire existence? Right. Every time your family needed money, if you're such a good gambler, then why couldn't you do that? Instead, what you would do is you would do that, and then you would literally drink it all down the toilet. You would drink it all down the toilet, instead of actually providing. It's like you were like, oh, well, they need to learn how to survive, so we're going to keep them in these shacks, and no heat and no restroom and no lunch to take to school and no anything, and not being able to bathe for weeks, and only being able to bathe in 4 inches of water, and they all have to share the same water, and then putting them in situations where the adults are going to sexually abuse them and be like, oh, well, just be tough. Right. They chose to live that life. And that's terrible, because those kids should not have been put through that. It's terrible. Yes, Andy, they're definitely mentally ill somehow,
For
some
sure.
way, in many ways, mentally ill for sure. I'm not sure what you're referring to on that. Sorry.
Yeah.
You can be super smart and not be able to function normally. Absolutely. That's empathy for the parents. The second book, their choice is equally astounding. Yeah. No, absolutely. They're incredibly intelligent, but like I said, I really do think he was some kind of autistic savant, kind of like something overarching there, and just not being able to function at full capacity, especially because of the abuse and the alcohol. I think that really stifled and just blocked a lot of potential. Because I just imagine, like, if he didn't have that illness, you know, especially alcoholism, how successful he could have been. Like, you know, all of the ideas. He had so many ideas. And he's always talking about the glass castle, right? And that's kind of that, like, that idea on the hill, like, we're going to build our glass castle and we're going to be so happy and it's going to be so amazing and we're going to be together. Because, I mean, on top of that, I mean, you could tell that they still wanted to all be together.
Right.
The parents wanted the kids to be self-sufficient, but they still wanted to all be together. So, I mean, there is that underlying family, like, thing. I mean, they came to New York after they all left them. They still followed them to New York, right? But I just think, like, all of his ideas and how smart he really was. Like, I just imagine if things could have been different, just how incredibly successful he could have been and what he could have brought to science and engineering and all that kind of thing. Like, you could really tell, like, there was something there, and mental illness and alcoholism and abuse and whatever else just took it away.
Yeah.
And
they go together a lot. I mean, they really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the mom too, like I think to myself, like when you find out that she probably really should be wearing glasses and then she still refuses, I'm just like, just think how much better your art could have been if you would have just
actually
worn
be able to
glasses.
see it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I felt really bad for Lori too, for the amount of time, especially when they express like how blind she was, like that she literally, when she had glasses, she couldn't believe what she was seeing. And I felt terrible.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, oh my God, like how long has she been not able to see? Like just not able to see and just living life like I can't see, you know, like
just all a blur.
Oh my gosh, it just kills me. Just kills me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll never forget that Hershey bar. I mean, I'm the one at the dinner table that will eat last. I will literally put all of the utensils toward my stepdaughter so that she can fill her plate first. And then I say to my husband, go ahead. And then I will do it last. I would never eat anything if my kids were starving. They would eat first. I was like, I'm going to kill this woman. Like, I'm going to find out where she is. I'm going to kill her. I couldn't believe it. Just, oh my God. She was not motherly. She was not. And that's the thing too. She came from money. So when they inherited that house, I was like, damn, there you go. Rent out half of the house. There's some money coming in. And then you have the other half of the house. And then you have this money. And like the kid said, oh, we can do so much with this. And what did they do with it? They bought art supplies. And they bought art supplies and they bought art supplies and they bought art supplies. And then they just ran the house into the ground. And I just think to myself, like, freaking crazy. And then later when she brings up the fact that she still has the land and that it's worth $1 million. And yeah, but don't sell it because it needs to stay in the family, which I can understand, but give me a break. You are homeless in New York City. Makes me so mad. Anywho, I think I read this in 2005, so
Sure.
I've forgotten. No worries. I'll remind you. I have more anger at the system. Why did no one get them out of the situation? Teachers, neighbors, medical people. So yes, abso-freaking-lutely. And I think to myself, like, I probably should have looked it up before this, but I think to myself, like, at what point in time did the system, when did that become a system?
Right.
Like, at what point in time did the government start stepping in and, like, saying something? So as I was reading, I was thinking, like, there's probably not a system in place yet. Like, that's why no one's stepping in. That's why, like, no one's helping. That's why, like, these kids aren't getting taken away by CPS, you know, until the guy showed up on the doorstep. The doorstep of which he had to, like, crawl up because all of the stairs were, like, falling off of the house. So there's a clue right there that maybe these kids need to be taken. But how he just shows up and the child tells him, like, don't worry, you don't need to come back. And then he literally doesn't come back. Like, what? What are you talking about? Like, you need to go and check on those kids. Like, there's no running water. They're getting electrocuted every time they're in the kitchen. Like, what? So when he showed up, I was like, oh, there is a system. There's someone there. Yeah. But then nothing happens. So, yes, Andy, absolutely. Very upset with the system. But at the same time, like, even now, I can tell you, even with today's system, there's sometimes not a lot that they can do.
Right.
I can tell you from experience that you can call for a check, but if someone tells you you can't come in, you can't come in.
Right, that's it.
So that's it. That's your wellness check. So, I mean, I totally get that. And we can be angry at the system. But unfortunately, the system also has a lot of hurdles. I can also tell you from experience, things that are supposed to be done sometimes take forever. And some people just get away with a lot of crap.
Yep.
I mean, think of our system and restraining orders.
Yeah.
How is a little piece of paper that says you cannot come within 50 yards of me going to help you when someone decides I'm still going to stab you because I hate you? What are you going to do? Dangle that piece of paper in front of them? I mean, what's a restraining order going to do? So, I mean, yes, the system sucks.
I know.
Because we don't live in a world where it tolerates action that is more direct. So, totally. I think teachers, I mean, there was the one teacher that was paying for her lunch, which was really nice. But again, like, even at that time, like, you know, now our system, you know, does offer free or reduced lunch in many areas, which is really nice. And like she said, like, even if she was feeling sick, she would still go to school because at least they had heat. So, I mean, I get it. And you know, what is a teacher going to do? I mean, they're going to contact the system, you know. Neighbors, I think they're all in similar situations. And like, and what stinks, and the neighbor, that's why the guy showed up from welfare or whatever, is because the neighbors called it in. But I feel like when they are in different areas, like, the neighbors didn't like them. So because they didn't like them, more so the parents or whatever, it's more of a hindrance to the neighborhood rather than a situation where you're like, oh man, we need to get involved here.
Right.
And the medical people too, like, but I think because I was thinking, especially in the very first story, like, where they hightail her out of there, like, they just kept moving. So like, every time they were in trouble, they just left. And back then, I think it's harder to track people. You know, they didn't have the technology we have now. So like, you just kept leaving and moving. And so I think they got a lot away with a lot of crap that they shouldn't have. But I mean, even when they skirted out when they had Maureen, like, so I mean, I can't even imagine the amount of medical bills they have just like piling up somewhere based on all the stuff they ran away from.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, most mamas would feed her kids first. That's why I can't believe. And so again, knowing what I know about being a new mother, I was thinking when Maureen was in the back of that truck, I mean, how young she was. I'm like, what about her being fed? I mean, babies are fed every 2 to 3 hours, and they were in the back of that truck for how long? That means that baby was starving. Literally, the baby was starving because they had been in the back of that truck for what, the entire day, and they never stopped and fed the baby. Like, it kills me. I'm just, ugh. Yeah, nothing happens quickly. No. Yes, they are. That's what it does. It makes them mad because you did something. Yes, they are a joke. Okay, let's get off that soapbox. Okay, where are we? Oh, wow, we haven't gotten through many questions. As the usual.
I know.
It gets all crazy. Okay, what character traits, both good and bad, do you think that Jeannette inherited from her parents, and how do you think these traits shaped Jeanette's life?
I mean, again, I didn't read a ton. Let's say 50 pages I read. I think it did make her strong and resilient, and that sort of no nonsense BS, like, I can get through this, is probably helpful. Coming from someone with massive anxiety her whole life, like, it's kind of envious a little bit. But I think that's a good thing. I think the bad too is also then the flip of that, like, girl, you gotta worry about crap. Like, stuff happens. Like, you gotta prep for it as much as you can, and you have to pay bills and follow through on medication and all that stuff. You have a responsibility to yourself and to the people you create a family with and your actual family. And like, it's not just whatever, it'll be fine. We'll just move on. Like, I don't know. So there's good and bad, I think, obviously, but again, I can't speak a ton to this, but I will say, coming from a family that has rampant alcoholism, and if the person that was a family member was not an alcoholic, they married an alcoholic, and usually multiple alcoholics, like, the mindset and everything, it just, I mean, everyone's reality is their own reality, and I don't want to deny anyone their existence, but like, reality is not a thing that most alcoholics I have known experience, and responsibility is not really a thing that they follow through on or that matters to them or whatever. It's all about drinking and them and how they feel. So I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah.
That's real tough.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I can't really speak to like any bad habits that she picked up because, I mean, we're not seeing her reflection of anything, so I don't know what, I don't feel like I can speak to her current traits because she doesn't really speak to her feelings or reflection of what happened. But what I will say is, in her path of becoming a writer, I think she definitely has that whimsical, sorry, I know you hate that word.
Sort of hate.
Yeah, that big idealism, very like creative. Because both of her parents, I mean, regardless of how I feel about them, they're both very creative people. And I think that Jeannette is very creative. She thinks big. she has no fear. And I think because of the way she grew up and the movement they had and the adaptation they had constantly, like they had to adapt to anything, any ever. I think she has a lot of tenacity. I think moving to New York and not thinking a thing of it and just like going for it and going after it and then going to college and getting the jobs at the Journal. I mean, she always went for it. And I think, you know, I'm not trying to like glorify them because I think she did enough of that in the book. I think because of the way she grew up, it's like a survival method for these kids to just go for it, because if not, they're just going to be left in the dust.
Right.
And I'm not saying that you have to have a really crappy, you know, upbringing to be able to go for things. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying for these kids, I mean, even the brother ends up being a police officer and then detective. I mean, it's really amazing. And Lori becomes something with art, like, I don't know if she's like in a museum or something like that, or a gallery, but they all went for it. They all followed their passion because their parents were very passionate people. They just did not channel it appropriately. But these kids did. And I think if anything came out of it, it did give them that. But I'm not saying that a crappy background, a crappy upbringing is the way that you need to do that. I'm not telling anybody to be like, give your kids a really crappy upbringing and then they'll be something someday.
Right.
You know? So I don't know that I can really speak to any bad traits. I mean, because I don't really feel like I know her in present time. I really only know her as a child. Yeah, I don't know. That's how I feel about that particular question. Oh, don't even say that. Sad. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks for joining us. Appreciate your comments. Yeah, that's sad, Andy. That made me sad. Okay, we only have a few last questions here. Despite everything, Jeannette Walls refuses to condemn her parents. Were you able to be equally non-judgmental? I think we've answered that pretty much throughout the entire discussion. No.
Yeah.
That's how I'm going to answer that question.
Yeah.
No. Okay, next question. Have you read anything like this? Are there other comparable memoirs that came to mind? What distinguishes this book? Have you read anything?
I don't think I have. I've read some things that involve alcoholism before, but again, it's a touchy subject for me. So I tend to just kind of not really want to read a lot of it. If it's there, that's fine. But if it's the main focus, it's hard. This writing style is a little different, I think, because it is sort of told in the present tense by an adult who's trying to be a kid. That is a little strange, a little unusual for me. And normally, I like dark stuff. I like upsetting things. I can read that stuff, but I don't know. This seems to be sort of on its own in a way. Like, can be on the shelf of like crappy childhoods with alcoholic, mentally ill parents. But I think it sits by itself, you know, on that shelf. So not really. I don't think it's. I don't know. What do you think? It's not really an answer I gave, I realize, but
no, that's okay. So if I think back, I don't know that I've read a ton of memoirs, but this did very much remind me of a memoir I read a couple years ago with my other book club, called White Dresses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that is written by a Wisconsin native. And and I cannot remember her name.
Mary Flugler or something.
Mary Flum Peterson or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's really about her mother, who was a teacher in the Beaver Dam area and was a compulsive hoarder.
Mm.
So she really spoke about different moments in her life, and she talked about her mother's early life. Her mother was going to be a nun.
Mm.
And through really crazy stuff that happened at the nunnery, she ended up excommunicating herself from the nunnery.
Wow.
And then ended up marrying Mary's father, who then ended up being gay. Well, not ended up, but was gay. And then, you know how that goes because of the time, that just wasn't an acceptable thing. And then towards the end, he ended up divorcing her or whatever. And then so she became this incredible hoarder. Like Mary talked about how her room was the only room that was like untouched by this incredible hoarding situation. And the reason why I like that memoir is because it was like the moments were spoken about or reflected upon, narrated in the moment, but then there was this immense like revelation of like, when I was this old, like this is how I felt, but now as an adult, like the experience was so like, and that's what I need from a memoir. I need to like understand your now emotions, not just tell me what happened. So I think that's why I think because I really liked that memoir, and I really liked the way that it was written, and I liked the way that it was structured, giving past information so you could really understand why this person became mentally ill and became a hoarder and all these things, and how that then affected this person. I feel like that's like my expectation now for memoirs, is just like the way that was structured, because it comes full circle. It comes full circle. And I think that's what I need. So yeah, I mean, I would say that's probably the one that I feel most reminds me of this. I don't know that I've really read too many other memoirs. I'm not sure. I didn't read this book. I think I probably won't. Yeah, if you
want to be depressed.
I mean, they say it's good.
And I will say too, I love reading memoirs. I mostly read celebrity memoirs because that's the kind of person I am. But I do really like them. And they're really, I'll read anything. I'll try anything once. But something like this just seems sort of on its own. But those are two I've heard good things about, both of those books, Andy. And I would like to give them a try, because I don't know. I want to give them a try. I'm really bummed that I couldn't read this, but I really couldn't read this,
Yeah. The Liars Club is by Mary Carr. I did see that. That was a similar read. And I think The Sound of Gravel, I think that one that was a recent one that came out. I think I saw Krista from Books and Jams read that like a year ago or 2 years ago. And she said it was really good. She read that pretty quickly.
Okay. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah. And then Inheritance is another one.
Who's that by? Sounded like Tina there. A little bit. Like Tina.
That's what I want. Oh, it's written by me. No, just kidding. Dani Shapiro.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm seeing this cover and I feel like, is that recent? Is that a recent read?
I don't know. I know
that like I've seen this on BookTube, people talking about. Yeah, 2019. Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen that on people's TBRs. Oh, sure. It's a memoir of genealogy paternity,
Oh, yeah.
and love.
Yeah. That does
Thanks,
look familiar to me
Andy.
too. Thanks.
Sonogram of 5 stars. Krista got me to
Wow.
read it. Yeah. Yeah, I thought I saw. That's something. Is that. I'm not even going to pretend like I know what it's about. Just kidding. I think I know, but I'm not going to sit here and say something and it be wrong because who wants to look stupid?
Oh, yeah. This cover looks super familiar. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I saw it's on there on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've come to the end of our questions. Any additional topics you'd like to cover regarding these characters? Oh, I didn't change the end of it. There's no plot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a memoir.
Yeah.
Any additional topics you want to discuss? I know there's so many we could discuss. I mean, we could talk about alcoholism. We could talk about mental illness. We could talk about, you know, these kids and so many things.
I know.
The interesting thing I find is how both of the kids that got married divorced and married, or the brother didn't marry someone right away, but Jeannette did. She did find somebody else. And I find that interesting because even though it was completely dysfunctional, their parents stayed together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they did stay together. So not that means like, oh, because your parents stay together, you're more likely to stay with your partner. But I did find that interesting. And I wonder if it's kind of like that idea of snagging the first thing that makes you happy.
Right.
Technically, I guess.
This seems stable. This seems good. Let's lock this down. Yeah.
I feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I did find that interesting. And I mean, could look into the psychology of that, but
yeah.
I didn't like the way that she described it though. Like, oh, I didn't belong on Park Avenue. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Because you came from nothing? Because that's not right. Anyone can be on Park Avenue.
Right.
I mean, anyone deserves to be there. If you're there, and you belong there. Like,
mm-hmm.
So I did not like the way she stated that.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. So the theme of this year throughout
mm-hmm.
pretty much rang true for any of the books that we picked. Somehow had a movie or television series along with it. Mm-hmm. And rightfully so, this memoir also has a movie. And I watched the trailer for that movie, and it has Brie Larson, who plays the adult version of Jeannette. Woody Harrelson plays the father, and Naomi Watts is the mother. And I have to say, it enraged me watching this trailer. Because it literally looks like it glorifies their upbringing, like the way that they were neglected, because it makes it look like the Brie Larson character is telling it, like reflecting back and like being reminded of it all. And though she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you put us through this, it's still all okay because, man, her dad, and in the book too, where they raise their glass to Rex Walls, I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. No. Mm-hmm. So I won't be watching that movie.
Yeah.
Because it's like, when you watch a movie like that, it's like a fictional thing. It's kind of like, oh, you watch a movie and you're like, oh, wow, those kids really made it through the shit. Yeah. But it's a true story. They shouldn't have had to go through that. And why are you glorifying it on the screen, making it look like it was like not that bad? Mm-hmm. So I won't be watching that movie.
Yeah, I won't either. I just won't.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think like any of those things matter. Like my husband, his parents are still together, and he's had a divorce, and his younger brother has had a divorce, and both of their grandparents stayed together too. I mean, I get it. You can't. I don't think that's tied to one another. I think everyone is their separate selves when it comes to that. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it reflects. I just think it's interesting sometimes.
Yeah.
When it's so long, I just think I guess my thought is like, does that mean anything? Like when you have the example, do you go, well, I'm hoping that because I always think like when people get into something, they think to themselves like, I want to make this decision for the rest of my life. But I understand things happen. I'm not going to sit here and be like, people don't change and whatever else. I totally get it. And if you need to leave a terrible situation, I don't believe that marriage should keep you there. Like obviously we're a progressive, nation, and a lot of that stuff that used to be is no longer. So I totally get it. I just always find it very interesting, like how that works, because it is so uncontrollable. You just never know. But anywho, off on a different tangent. I'm really happy we could discuss this book tonight.
Me too.
And get it over with. And I thank you all for coming on to our rescheduled evening. And I hope this works for y'all next year. Yeah, I don't know if I'll keep this book just because I really didn't like it. I mean, it's not a bad book, but it's not my cup of tea. So I think I might put this in a little free library someday, because I don't think it needs to be sucking any room on my shelves.
Yeah. Mine's going back to the library tomorrow.
So,
yeah. That's okay.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your
Thanks,
comments.
Sandy.
You guys do such a nice job of keeping us going and adding to the craziness that Dani sometimes goes off of. Crazy moments. I will say that I just finished a book today that I actually really, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry. I'm like shutting things off somehow. I just finished a book called The Messy Lives of Book People. It's lighthearted. It's not, groundbreaking by any means, but it's by an author with a weird name. Let me look it up real quick. Her name is
that Debbie Tung?
No, but I like her. No, has she written any novels? I think she just does cartoony things.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, sorry.
Sounds
like
Phaedra Patrick. It's a British author. It's called The Messy Lives of Book People. And I thought it was really good. I liked it a lot. I just finished, I listened to it on audiobook, and I just finished it today. It was really good. I did enjoy it. So if you're looking for something lighthearted and a book about bookish kind of things, I highly recommend that book. It is about a woman, Liv Green, who is a cleaner for an author, her favorite author. And through some really interesting things that happen, she ends up having to help write the ending of this author's 20th and final book of the series, kind of thing. So think of like Louise Penny kind of series that's just, the readers love it. And but the best part about it is just everything that is so interconnected between these people and so many others that she meets along the way. and her own exploration of herself. It was really good. I did like it. I'd give it a solid 4 stars. It gets a little bit long in the middle. There's a little bit of a moment where I'm like, is this book ever going to end? Like, I just want to know what happens.
Yeah.
But then you get over that hump, and it is very good. So The Messy Lives of Book People. I just wanted to throw that in there in case anybody's looking for a good book to read. It was very good. So yes, thank you, Sarah. Thank you for joining us. It's so nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. I mean, I haven't been online really on my own page, so maybe you've been around and I've just missed you. But it's nice to see you. Every time I think of raptors, I think of you. Well, first I pee myself a little bit, and then I think of you. So, just kidding. I don't pee myself all the time. Let's be real. I had a child, and every time I sneeze, it's
right.
You never know. So, okay. Well, I think we'll call it a night. I want to thank everyone for being here. You won't see us for a little bit because we're going to be having a little bit of a break here for December, but back on Tuesday, January 3rd, you will see us with some new products as well as our reading sprints for Lauren Willig's That Summer. Well, have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Good night, and have a wonderful holiday season, everyone.
Yeah, happy holidays. Bye-bye.
Bye.